This is Santapod, Mecca for Britain's best drag racers, and this is the first meeting of the season for the Santapod Racers Club. Drivers and riders from all over Britain are here to compete on a variety of machines, from saloons that wouldn't look out of place on the North Circular to the more exotic vehicles that would have a traffic cop reaching instinctively for his notebook. This is bracket racing, where different classes of vehicle compete against the clock, trying to match their target or dial-in times. It's racing not just for the rich enthusiast, but for anyone with a set of wheels, a license, and the urge to cover a quarter of a mile in as little time as possible. It's qualifying time, so let's get it on and hand it over to race commentator John Price as the first of the bikes hits the strip.
First pair coming round are contesting a 990 bike now. Basically this means that the two guys are looking to get to the top end as quickly as they can, but not to go quicker than the time restriction of 9.90. And if you look at the finishing gantry, you can see, as a subtle reminder to our two riders, 9.90 written on the top. In the Budweiser lane on the yellow GSX, that's Paul Carter from Essex, 1135cc Suzuki, and his opposing qualifier, Mark Sweetman, all the way from Liverpool, the gas man. And Mark Sweetman also looking to run on his Suzuki, 1260cc Suzuki, as close to 990 as he can, and Mark runs right underneath the index, goes through at 9.50. Paul Carter, however, is a second slower than he wants to be. He was looking for 990 and runs through at 10.95. Our next pair coming to run in the white leathers in the right-hand lane, Carl Larkham on his Crazy Cat Suzuki Katana, and from Swindon in Wiltshire, Den Avenel on the purple Hayes Suzuki, turbocharged 1170cc Suzuki Power for Den Avenel. But Carl Larkham seems to have some problems down there. The man from Esher in Surrey pushing the bike back from the start line. Den Avenel then on his own, looking for a run of 9.90. Sponsored by Rover, Bike Image UK and Fusion Technology. A lot of sponsors with that machine. Runs through 10.56. And that gets him the #1 qualifying spot in the 990 bike division.
Dave Hall, your bike's a little different from the two we've seen before, because you rode it here today. Now, why is that?
I certainly did, yes. Brought my friend Michael up, and a great believer in street legal race bikes and cars, as I used to race my car as well.
So a real exponent of the Rung What You Brung school.
Definitely.
What are we talking here? Just a standard GSXR 1100?
Yes, apart from the Harris N-cans, it's completely stock 91M model.
Well, the quickest of all the bracket series is Super Pro, and this is Martin Jones from Southampton. And Martin here, all on his own this weekend, nobody to run against, in a class on his own. And this beautiful piece of drag racing art, imported from America about 3 seasons ago now, built by George Cathy at Fort Worth in Texas in 1986, runs with a big block Chevrolet engine on methanol, injected, and this car can run right down into the 7-second bracket. When we run Super Pro, the drivers look for times between 7 and 8.5 seconds, and at the moment in this country we only have a few of these very, very expensive cars. But what a beautiful looking machine. It looks like one of the big drag races, one of the top alcohol or top fuel cars. Martin launches very, very hard with that machine, spins the back wheels on the line, heads towards the top end. That's going to be an 8-second run. It is indeed. 8.60, 160 miles per hour.
But you can compete in bracket racing with something a lot less exotic. Here's a Rover taking on a Ford Maverick. Say what?
And the Ford Maverick out there in the right-hand lane in the hands of John Parker. Now, John should normally be running a Sierra Cosworth, but unfortunately they've experienced a bit of damage to the wiring loom on the car, so they've had to trailer that. So just for the fun of it, John's out there. He's come all the way from Shepton Mallet down there in the West Country. So rather than go home completely disappointed, he's bringing out the tow car to run. Well, the good news is that the car we thought was broke, Andy Prisball, isn't broken at all, and back out he comes. Big block full power underneath the hood of this beautifully painted Ford sit-up and beg Ford Pop, running in the modified ET class, and number one qualifier in the modified ET is Danny Hearn at the moment, who's run a 10.33, and a 10.46 for Andy Prisball gets him the number 2 qualifying spot. So well done to him. Moves straight up into the number 2 position, knocks last year's champ Gordon Smith down into the number 3 spot. Well, Conrad Stanley doing a heavy burnout there with the Ford Anglia, the sit-up and beg Ford Anglia, and Conrad's car really is a sit-up and beg machine. It's still the same shape and size that Mr. Ford originally intended this family car to be in the 30s, 40s and 50s, and now in the hands of a drag racer in the 1990s, powered by a big block 427 cubic inch engine, sitting at the moment in the number 7 qualifying spot, having run 11.15. Well, the man from Chepstow went looking to go quicker than that, so let's see, he's all on his own here, how he gets on, looking to beat 11.15, so watch the figures on the finishing gantry as he heads towards the top end. Is he going to go quicker? 11.07, clicks off 0.08 of a second, 120 miles an hour, still in the number 7 qualifying spot. Well, with this open qualifying session, a lot of our cars and bikes coming round on their own, and Gordy Smith, last year's champ, now making his way up to the start line, sitting at the moment in the number 3 qualifying spot, having run a 10.63. The car has previously been capable of running down into the 10.40s. First meeting of the year. Can he get it running any quicker than a 10.63 as he heads towards the top end? Look for those numbers. 10.73 that time around, 125 miles per hour.
Gordon and Alan Smith, and a very special car. Tell us what you've got in there.
It's a 456 cubic inch Chrysler motor, bored out 60 thou, roller cam, roller lifters, aluminium rods and pistons. Makes about 650 horsepower, 700 maybe.
So run that cubic inch by me again.
456.
Which in cc's is?
It's about 7,300.
So there's a good few Fiesta engines in there.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it'd see a few Fiestas off.
Just 1 or 2?
1 or 2, yeah. Yeah, it's a pretty quick car. Acceleration, 0 to 60 is about 2 seconds, I should think.
So have you got any kind of blowers, turbos on this, or is it just straight muscle?
Straight muscle, yeah. Runs on ordinary gasoline, out the pump.
And brother Alan there, what do you do in this kit, in this crew?
Well, since I've retired from racing, I've become brother's crew chief. I motivate him into doing well, which speaks for itself on the results he got last year, which he deserved, I thought. It was hard work because it's so competitive, this class. You know, you've got to keep everything in good condition. And that he managed to do. You've got to have quick reaction times, which he had. Although we had disappointments, I think we had more happy moments in beating the rest of the field. But basically, I just chase him and kick ass.
Well, like a swarm of angry hornets, our 2 990 bikes complete their burnout and run across the start line, just getting the tyre, the rear tyre nice and warm. 990 bike. These very, very heavily tuned machines running in excess of 1,000cc 4-cylinder engines run on what we would call a street treaded tyre. All of this power on a racing slick, there is still a treaded tyre at the back, and that is really the only thing that holds back the power on these machines. If we had slicks on here, then these guys would get so much more traction. They'd be popping wheelies on the start line and finding them very, very difficult to control. On the yellow bike, we've got Paul Carter from Essex. On the red bike, we've got the gas man, Mark Sweetman from Liverpool. And at the moment, Mark Sweetman is sitting in the number 3 qualifying spot. Paul Carter in the number 2 qualifying spot. If you remember on the first qualifying run for Mark Sweetman, he ran right underneath the index. Well, Paul Carter runs 10:43 that time and gets himself the number 1 qualifying spot.
Well, I'm joined by Mark Sweetman, owner of this amazing machine, but you didn't get here this morning, you came down last night.
That's right. We were very late last night, we arrived. It was pretty bad weather last night, raining hard. We got stuck in the mud, but finally got it set up with the help of Mandy, the girlfriend. She puts up with quite a lot with the drag racing, but very surprised this morning to find the weather ready to go out and have a go with the bike.
It has been a bit surprising. Do you have to shake a stick at Mandy to get her involved, or is she quite keen?
No, she loves it, she loves it. She puts up with the bike in the front room at home. We polish it. She comes to all the meetings. She stands there on the start line with me, checks the nitrous system, pulls the shifter tag out for the gears, visor down, puts me into stage and makes sure I'm straight up on the track. So ready to go, and then it's down to me. I do the easy bit.
Now, you mentioned nitrous oxide there, and that's what dentists use. What does it do to this machine?
That's right. Basically, it gives an injection into the combustion chamber, which gives you added power when you hit the button. It's very effective and quite an economic way of going faster. Consequences can be quite horrendous if you have an explosion. Unfortunately, I've not had one since '92 when the engine was totally destroyed from bottom to top. A very expensive crash. It's basically, it's a GSX 1100 motor, put together originally by V&M Racing at Rochdale. I've put the chassis together, we've modified it, put the gas in there, and it's good for 155 at the moment. Best run I think it's done is a 9.1 second 155. Can't complain. It's nice if you can keep the 2 wheels on the floor, you know.
Well, at that speed, if you had wings, I think you'd be getting airborne, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it can be surprising, especially with the nitrous oxide. You tend to put the gas in 2nd or 3rd gear and it can just stand straight up on end. So you're either riding it or riding it like a horse or riding it like a bike. It can be quite hairy at times, you know.
I know you've got an air shifter on here. Why's that?
Right, basically it's to speed up your gear shift. But you keep your throttle wide open and just pump the shifter button and it'll shift gear automatically. There's an electric device in there which kills the engine for 1,000th of a second or so while you shift up the gearbox, allows you maximum power. Don't have to worry about changing it with a clutch and your foot, just straight on the button.
We're back with the modified ETers, and it's Tony Guy with the Ford Model B in the left-hand lane. Tony sitting in the number 8 spot at the moment, having run 11.17 in the modified ET qualifiers. And the man in the red Plymouth Duster in the right-hand lane, that's last year's champion, Gordon Smith, sitting at the moment in the number 3 spot, having run a 10.63. So there's about a half a second between these two on their qualifying times. They both seem to be suffering a little bit from bogging down away from the start line. Tony Guy going right out of shape with the Model B. Gordon Smith finding the power at the last minute and going for it, but 12.30 in that left-hand lane, 15.15 in the right-hand lane is not going to change the current qualifying list. We're back with our open qualifying again. Jim Koenig from Hampshire with his Kawasaki, and Jim, the only super street bike that we have here this weekend, having run a 9.95, has been a wee bit quicker during the practice session, but it's a whole new thing for him now running in super street bikes, so all the restrictions are off. He can go as quick as he likes. But the major problem is that he still runs with a street legal treaded tyre on the back. So that really cuts down on the amount of power he can make, and he runs through 9.83 at 134 miles an hour. Air shifter on that machine with a 6-speed gearbox. Well, the green E-Type of Lee Morris coming out to the line, one of our Euro Challenge cars here this weekend. Lee hails from Nuneaton, and the car, of course, is a kit car based on the famous Jaguar E-Type, running with a 3.8 litre straight 6 Jaguar power plant, and that looks as though it's going to be a really quick run. 12.07, 104 miles per hour from a 6-cylinder car.
Hey Bud, how you doing?
Hello there.
I'm sorry, it's not a Bud, it's a Budette, it's a Miss. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much.
So when the man says showtime, what does that mean to you?
The old heart starts beating, the adrenaline starts going, and I think I want to win. So.
Now, being a woman, I guess you could say that instead of people having big balls, maybe you've got big ovaries. Is that right?
Possibly. Never thought of it quite like that. I think some of the women have got just as much balls as some of the men, actually.
So what machine are you sitting in here?
It's a competition altered, and it's got a Chrysler 383 big block engine in it.
And when did you start getting into drag racing?
About 18 months ago.
And how's it going?
Quite well. We did half a season. It went relatively well. We finished 6th in the divisional last year. We were really pleased with it. And we're hoping to do better this year because we've got all the statistics from last year, but keep your fingers crossed.
Well, look, the best of luck. I must apologise for getting your gender wrong, but the best of luck and hope you have a good day out.
I hope so. Thanks very much.
Well, we're back with the modified ET cars, meaning that they're looking for runs between 10 and 11.5 seconds. And the lady sitting in the open air in the competition altered car, Model T bodied Ford, is Faye Fisher. And Faye and husband Paul, they were in actual fact married last year. And Paul has been the driving force behind Faye's winning ways with the Lucky Fish car. Big block Chrysler power in there. And sitting at the moment in the number 4 qualifying spot, having run a 10.88. Just having a quick check on that, 10.88. Running alongside her in that beautiful Peugeot 405, that's Tony Reid. Tony at the moment sitting in the number 5 qualifying spot, having run a 10.96. So between the two of them, on their earlier qualifying times, they were very evenly matched. So let's see who gets to the top end first this time. It is Faye Fisher. They both go better than previously. Faye now runs a 10.65 and Tony Reid a 10.88, and they stay in those numbers 4 and 5 qualifying positions. So that's Faye Fisher and Tony Reid.
Well, wave goodbye to qualifying. It's the second stage of the competition. Elimination runs for a place in the finals. First out are the Mod ETs, and the first on the strip is Faye Fisher.
Faye is a lady who works for London Transport, and indeed we've been saying all the way through the afternoon that she used to be a tube train driver, believe it or not. Absolutely expert with origami and yo-yos, amongst pistol shooting and what else does she do? Parachuting? My goodness me, this lady is a real action lady. Sitting here though in her all-conquering Model T bodied altered. This car's the number 1 qualifier here today, having run a 10.31 during qualifying. And she's on a bye run to start her off. So Faye Fisher then hooks up, really goes for it, and we watch her disappearing off into the gloom in the Budweiser lane, heading down towards the top end. This is modified ET, runs through 11.18, so she goes through into the next round with a run of 11.18, where she will meet the winner of a race between Gordon Smith and Conrad Stanley. What a colourful pair coming out to start their burnouts. Tony Reid and Michael Ismail. Well, Mike Ismail from the Isle of Dogs in London, where when he's not drag racing, he's looking after people's lifts, the lift engineer by trade. And his wife, very heavily connected with the sport of drag racing. One of the ladies I'm sure that we've been talking to throughout the day, and that's Carol Ismail from the When in Need charity.
We raise money for anyone, any racer that is actually injured in drag racing.
Now, you've been telling me that that's unique in motorsport, isn't it?
That's correct. We are the only registered charity of our kind in motorsport, so we are, yes, unique in what we do.
How long have you been going?
We've been set up now for the past 4 years as a registered charity, and 2 years before that as just a charity before we actually got charity status.
So where do you find most of your funds coming from? How do you raise the money?
We have a membership where all the racers have to be members to obviously qualify for any sort of payout when they are injured, from raffles, donations from companies, from the SPRC club, promoters and raffles, any sort of way we can raise money, we're there raising it, shaking our buckets and passing around the blankets.
Now what's going to happen here is our crew up in race control are going to set up a handicap between these two, which has been worked out on their qualifying times. Now we're going to dial in a 10.85 for Tony Reid and the Peugeot, and 11.15 for Mike Ishmael. So it means Mike Ishmael leaves the start line just 0.3 of a second before Tony Reid. And what Tony Reid has got to try and do is catch him up and pass him, but not go quicker than that dialed-in time of 10.85. But it is Michael Ishmael who gets to the top end first, acknowledged on our computer screen up here as the winner, 11.36 at 117 miles an hour. Mike Ishmael goes through into the next round, having run at 11.36. This is going to be an interesting one between these two, because we've got last year's champion out here in the right-hand lane, the man who carries the number 1 plate at the moment. That's Gordy Smith. A dialed-in time for him of 10.90, and Conrad Stanley, a dialed-in time of 11 seconds. Now let's just have a look and see how they did on their qualifying, because Gordy Smith was running down in the 10.6s, and 11.07 was Conrad Stanley's time. So Gordon Smith has got to be a little bit careful here that he doesn't break out. They're going to be leaving the start line almost together. The tree burns down, and both of them give really good reaction times. 0.62 for Conrad Stanley, 0.57 for Gordy Smith. And what Gordon has got to try and do is just poke his nose across at the top end in front of Conrad Stanley. He does it. 11.12. Yo, he's on the money there. Well, now this form of levelling, as we call it in drag racing, where we get the drivers to put their own dialed-in times on the back of the cars, has been formulated throughout the years of drag racing, and it makes it all for very, very close racing. We've now got Chris Isaacs coming round in the left-hand lane, the Bad Attitude Ford Prefect, a dialed-in time for him of 11.05. Danny Hearn in the right-hand lane with the Dragster, the rear-engine Dragster. Danny has got a dialed-in time of 10.30. So, basically what it means is that the man in the Ford Prefect is going to leave 0.8 of a second, and great reaction time there. We get the reaction times up here in race control. A reaction time of 0.596 for Chris Isaacs. Really got away a red lighting run in that right-hand lane for Danny Hearn. He left before the green came on, so Chris Isaacs takes the win there and goes through into the next round with a run of 11.09. Well, here's our next pair, and it's a battle of the Fords again with a Model B in the right-hand lane. We're still in modified ET, where the cars run between 10 and 11.5 seconds. And Tony Guy is the man from Billericay in Essex in the right-hand lane. The Ford Model B running with a 355 cubic inch Chevrolet engine, and Andy Prisball in the left-hand lane running big block Ford in that beautiful sit-up and beg Ford pop. He hails from Peterborough. Now let's just have a look and see where these were. Andy Prisball was the number 3 qualifier, having run a 10.46. He's got a dialed-in time of 10.40, and Tony Guy, a dialed-in time for him of 10.99 means he goes first, and his qualifying time was 11.06. Now it looks as though Andy Prisball is running alongside Tony Guy now. It's the first one to the top end who doesn't break out of that dialed-in time, and it is Andy Prisball who shuts down Tony Guy, puts him on the trailer, heading for home. He runs a 10.59 in the Budweiser lane, 115 miles per hour, so he goes through into the next round.
Calling all the Pro ET cars, calling all the Pro ET cars. These run times between 8.5 and 10 seconds for the quarter mile. Steve Warner's on his own for a solo run.
This local man from Beaujeu in Northants, just a couple of minutes down the road from Sandipod, now being sponsored by Torco Oil and Strand. And Small Block Chevrolet sits behind the driver. Really nicely put together piece of equipment. And doing so well. was first in the divisional championship last year, and of course this is what this is. This is a round, or the first round of the SPRC divisional championship. That looks a brilliant run, absolute stormer of a run, and he goes even quicker, 9.21 for Steve Warner. That is a superb run, 141 miles an hour, not worrying about the cold or the climatic conditions at all, and just puts down a 9.21. Fabulous run. Well, still waiting for somebody to clear the top end of the strip. And even though it's so cold out there, our guys will have to watch their engines here that they don't get overheated. That's a problem with these drag racing engines. Look very closely at these machines. Of course, you will see they don't have a radiator, so they have water locked into the system, which of course after a little while tends to get a wee bit hot, and you can just take the engine over the edge and do some hefty damage to it if you try and run it when it's already cooking. So is our next pair anyway. Last year's champion in the competition altered car, the Black Yorkshire T. That's Rob Emmett. Now, Rob was our number 2 qualifier here today, having run a 9.39. And he's up against Chris Walsall. Chris Walsall from Northolt in Middlesex in the yellow dragster. And Chris, again, another man plagued with lots and lots of problems here this weekend. Eventually managed to get the car down the track in a 12-second run. Chris has had a little time away from us here at Saint-Paul in the world of drag racing, and now making his way back. And again, heads up racing, a dialed in time of 9.30. Chris Walsall gets it going. It sounds so flat on the start line, but it does crack on afterwards. But it's Rob Emmett who pulls a red light on the start line and gives the win to Chris Walsall. So Chris, who was really up against it there, having run flat right the way through the qualifying, he takes the win because Rob Emmett red lit on the start line. So Chris Walsall goes through with that run of 13.12 into the next round. You know, the crowd always loves a good David and Goliath battle, and that's what we've got here. We're moving on to 1090 bike. If you look towards the finishing gantry, you can see 1090 written up on both lanes. What that means is that both motorcyclists have got to try and get to the top end first, but not run quicker than 10.90. And left-hand lane, the man from Essex, that's Dave Hall. He is our number 1 qualifier, besides being last year's 1090 bike champ. He qualified with a 10.98 today, up against the little 500cc Suzuki in the right-hand lane of Nigel Chapman from Hastings. Nigel was our number 4 qualifier with a run of 11.81, so almost a second between these two. And what Nigel's got to try and do is hope that Dave Hall breaks out, because I think that's the only way the little Suzuki is going to manage to take a win away from that man. The brake light's coming on in the left-hand lane for Dave Hall, but a confident win for last year's champion, 11.09, 106 miles per hour in the left-hand lane on the green and white machine. That's the H2 Triple Kawasaki, 770cc's of Kawasaki power of Phil Clayton from Kent. And in the right-hand lane, that's Stu Chamberlain, the carpenter from Swindon in Wiltshire, who's on a 4-stroke Suzuki 1100. So once again, it's David and Goliath, 750 in that left-hand lane, 1100cc's in that right-hand lane. But a good start there in the left-hand lane for Phil Clayton. But I don't think it's going to be good enough. Phil Clayton was our number 5 qualifier, but the man in the right-hand lane was our number 2 qualifier, and backs that up by taking the win quite comfortably there. 11.44 takes the win. Well, we're going to ask for Mod ET, please, into the far up road for the next round. Mod ET into the far up road for the next round, please. And we've got quite a few cars here in different classes, and a motorcycle come to that, who there is only one of that particular type of car here. So as we have with Lee Morris with the E-Type Jaguar, Lee is putting in a demo run with the E-Type just to show that the car really does run well. 11.64, I think that's the quickest he has run today. I'm just having a quick look here. I'm sure that his last practice run was 11.90, comes out this evening and runs 11.64. Very, very potent machine. Well, another class that we have in the ET bracket division is Super ET, and this is where the cars look to run between 11.5 and 13.5 seconds. For this particular meeting, we've only got 2, but don't let that upset you, because the 2 we've got are really, really great little cars. In the right-hand lane, the black car, if you can see it out there in the gloom, the black and flame Ford Pop of Ray Guy from Essex. And he's up against the little Austin A30 of Martin Wicker. So just a little side-by-side demo run from these 2. And they're going heads up from the start line. And both of them really good reaction times, just slightly better reaction time in that left-hand lane for the little Austin A30 of 0.56 as opposed to a 0.68. And the man who gets to the top end first, Ray Guy, 11.99, shuts down the little Austin A30, who manages a 13.08.
Right then, Martin, don't be offended, but isn't this what the district nurse used to drive?
Well, yeah, they used to a few years ago. Not quite the same as this one, though.
So, run me through what you've done to it.
It's basically the only part of the original A30 is the body shell. Complete new chassis, roll cage, 390 cubic inch Ford V8, which is around about 6.6 litres. And the back end out of an old E-Type Jaguar sitting underneath the back.
So the engine now is getting on for, well, it's over 6 times the original spec.
Yes, that's right, yeah, and then a lot more times in horsepower.
So what set you off to build something like this?
It was actually built by somebody else originally, and the reason he used the car was the fact that he had a very small garage to build it in, and this was the only size car that would fit in the garage. So
is that true, or is that a racing tall tale?
That is absolute truth. It was a written off A30 which just about fitted in the garage, so it had to be this long.
So what type of reaction do you provoke in your local MOT station when you run this in?
They love it. All they'd want to do is take it out for a road test.
And I hope you say no.
I certainly do.
Here we go up to the start line then. Faye Fisher dials in 11.25 with the altered, and 10.90 dial in the right-hand lane for Gordy Smith. Now, it's interesting to note that Faye Fisher has dialed in a time which is almost a second slower than her qualifying time. And that really, really means she gets away first. Gordy Smith is in the chase position, but can she break out? That's going to be the thing. I don't know why Faye has done that. It's very, very strange. She's got to come off the loud pedal at the top end. She breaks out in a big way. Well, I couldn't understand why she did that. That seemed very, very strange indeed. She qualified with a 10.31. She dials in 11.25. And of course, the one thing she's going to do under pressure is go quicker, which she does. Gordon Smith also broke out. He dialed in a 10.90 and ran a 10.87. But as he broke out the least, only by 0.03 of a second, it's him who goes through into the next round. Okay, here we go with our next pair then. And it's the Pram from Hell, the Citroen Diane of Michael Ismail from London, up against the beautiful Ford Pop of Andy Prisball from Peterborough. Now, Andy was our number 3 qualifier. He ran a 10.46 during qualifying and dials in a 10.40. So he's just gone on a little bit of a quicker time with his dial-in, so that if he does, under pressure, happen to go a bit quicker, then he's allowed himself a wee margin there. The Pram from Hell, the Citroen Diane, Michael Ishmael has dialed in 11.15. He was qualifying with 11.18, so same rules apply, and pulls a red light. Michael Ishmael goes before the green comes on. He reacts in 0.37 instead of 0.50, and so the win automatically goes to Andy Prisball in the left-hand lane and runs a beautiful 10.45 anyway at 126 miles an hour.
Well, I'm with Mike Ismail, who is the driver of this Citroen, known in drag racing circles as the pink Pram from Hell. Yeah. I've got to ask you, why?
Not my choice, first of all, not my choice of name. It was just John Price who actually named the car. Got into drag racing about 5 years ago and thought, we had to get a car that was unusual. and this is it.
Hey, you hit the nail on the head there, right? So let's hang on, guys, come on, lift the top off for us, and Mike, if you can, we'll have a look at this. All shall be revealed. Whoa, good Lord above. Now, this really isn't real, is it? Mike, come in next to me now. Talk us through, what have we got in this Citroen? Because it's not a 2CV anymore.
No, it's a 460 Ford, big block, 7.5 litre engine. Capable of 0 to 60 in about 3 seconds.
Which isn't quite what the French had in mind, I don't think.
Not quite. It's slightly quicker than that.
Well, Chris Isaacs on a bye run then with the Bad Attitude Ford Prefect. Now, this car is so stock. If you get a chance to have a look at this machine in the pits, it looks just like an original 1953 Ford Prefect. I love these machines. I owned one myself when I was a child. But what Chris has done, he is a race car builder, a chassis builder by trade. He's done all the modifications to the wheels, etc., inside the car, so that from the outside it just looks perfectly stock and looks as though it could go to a classic car rally, but internally it's a whole different story. Now, he's on a bye run, dials in 11 seconds, and what does he run? 11 seconds. Can't be bad. The man knows his car. He's through into the next round of Modified ET. Steve Warner in the right-hand lane. The man with the blue Blazer dragster, 355 cubic inches of Chevrolet power. He hails from Bossier, just along the road here from Santipod Raceway, and he's up against Dennis Hawkins. Dennis also 355 cubic inch small block Chevrolet power, also the modern configuration rear engine dragster. Now, he ran a 993 during qualifying and dials in a 999. And Steve Warner in the right-hand lane, he's dialed in a 920, so the handicap going against the man in the right-hand lane. The man in the Budweiser lane gets off first and is going to try and get that nose across at the top end first, but no, he doesn't do it, and Steve Warner takes the win. And look at that, he dialed in a 9.20 and he takes the win with a 9.28. Well, Mark Sweetman is in the final of 990 bike, and he's going to be meeting one of this pair in the Budweiser lane, the left-hand lane, the Crazy Cat Suzuki Katana of Carl Larkham from Esher in Surrey, and up against him is Den Avenall, and Den from Swindon in Wiltshire. He's a tool maker and sponsored by Rover, Bike Image UK, Fusion Technology. There's a lot of sponsors there, and let's just have a look and see how they did during qualifying. Den Avenall was our number 2 qualifier with a 10.20. Carl Larkham had a lot of problems here today, was our number 4 qualifier with a 12.02. But it's Den Avenall this time who's got the problems, and Carl Larkham suddenly, in the elimination, finds form and runs right on that 990 index, 9.99 for Carl Larkham. Well, there you go. That's the time to find form when you need it in the elimination. And he's in the final, where he is going to be meeting Mark Sweetman. Well, we're moving on to 1090 bike, and similar sort of rules apply. The riders have got to try and get to the top end first, but not go quicker than 10.90. Left-hand lane, we've got Stu Chamberlain on his Predator Suzuki. Now, Stu was our number 2 qualifier, having run 11.12. And up against him, Paul Delarue in the right-hand lane. Paul also on a Suzuki, 750 Suzuki, and really going every which way but straight away from the start line. Now, Paul was our number 6 qualifier, but it looks as though it's going to be the man in the left-hand lane right the way through to the top end. Stu Chamberlain takes the win, 11.10. That's a good run for him. Stu Chamberlain through into the final, where he meets this man, last year's 1090 bike champion. On this particular round, he's on a bye run, so he automatically goes through into the final. And looking for points, Dave Hall, this is from Essex, will be looking for points in both the divisional championship, which of course this is round number 1, and also of course on a national championship level. He contests all the rounds, And the interesting thing with this man, of course, is that he rides the bike to whatever track he's racing on, races it, and then rides it back home again. How close to 1090 does he get? 11.17, 11.17 and 122 miles per hour. So he is in the final to meet Stu Chamberlain. Well, on the two-wheel division, we've only got one super street bike. And of course, what we're hoping is going to happen is that as the season progresses, we're going to get more and more people coming out into these various classes at these night racing events. From small acorns, one must always assume that great oaks are going to grow. And this is Jim Koenig, who has just made his way up into Super Street Bike. Super Street Bike is where anything goes. There is no time restriction on it. The only real restriction they have is that they still have to run on a treaded tyre. And Jim Koenig with his Kawasaki runs through there 10.48 at 128 miles an hour. He has been running right down into the 9-second bracket today, but it's a wee bit chilly out there at the moment. Jim Koenig, Super Street Bike. Well, Lee Morris back out with the E-Type green with envy, although you can't see too much green in this light. And just putting in a demonstration run. He's using it as a practice run and runs down into the 11s, normally 12.04 on that run. It really is cold out there, do I need to tell you? 100 miles per hour at the top end from a straight six 3.8 litre Jaguar power plant. Well, here we go. The semi-finals of Modified ET gives us one bye run, and that's the Ford Pop of Andy Prisball. And just letting all the burnout smoke out of the car there as the car comes up to the start line, running on his own. Our number 3 qualifier has run with this 10.40 Darlin right the way through the elimination, and that's going to take him into the final. Qualified with a 10.46. That car is superb, just runs as straight as a die right the way through the quarter of the mile. And is he going to come off the loud pedal, or is he going to go for a loud one? No, 10.75 goes right the way through at 113 miles per hour. So it's Andy Prisball into the final, the man from Peterborough with the Ford Pop. Well, this is going to be an interesting one between these two, because Chris Isaacs with the black Prefect, if you can pick that out, just coming up to the start line in the Budweiser lane, the left-hand lane, has dialed in 10.99 now. He has run 10.99 here today. Gordy Smith with the red Plymouth Duster has dialed in a 10.90, but he's run a couple of 10.6s and 10.7s here today, so he's going on the dangerous side here. He's given himself a dialed-in time which is slower than the times he's been running. Now Chris Isaacs is going to try and get away from here. Extremely like that. Excellent start line reaction from both of those drivers. Now it's the first one to the top end. Gordon Smith going right in towards the centre line, pulls it back out again, and it is Chris Isaacs who gets to the top end first. But in actual fact, it was Gordy Smith who got to the top end first, but he broke out. He runs a 10.83. I said he was going a little bit on the dangerous side there. He dialed in a 10.90. Runs 10.83, got to the top end first, but of course he broke out, went quicker than he's dialed in. So the man in the left-hand lane, the Ford Prefect driver, Chris Isaacs, goes through into the final, where it's going to be all Ford Popular against Prefect. Well, here we go, the final of Modified ET, and it's an all Ford final. As the two cars go into the water box underneath race control, ready to start their burnout. And the idea, of course, with the burnout to heat up the rear slicks so that they get as much grip out there on the start line as they possibly can. Now, let's have a look at the dialed-in times we've got for these two. Andy Prisball with the red Ford Pop in the Budweiser lane. A dialed-in time for him of 10.50. It's getting colder. The car is not performing quite as well as it did this afternoon, where he ran a 10.46. And right-hand lane, a 10.99 for the Black Ford Prefect of Chris Isaacs, the man from Romford. And that was his perfect dial-in time. That was his qualifying time this afternoon, was a 10.99. So he has the edge away from the start line, but it looks as though Andy Prisball goes by him. But Andy Prisball breaks out. There you go, he runs too quick. He dialed in a 10.50, ran his best time of the day, 10.40. He breaks out, and Chris Isaacs runs his dial-in, 10.99. And that's spot on with his qualifying time and dialed-in time. A worthy winner. The race car builder from Romford takes the win. Chris Isaacs will be receiving the trophy. Well, here we go, the final of Pro ET, and just to remind you, of course, that all of our winners are being brought down to the start line at the end of the racing evening, and will be presented with their winners' trophies and runners-up trophies. So certainly worth waiting for. And we have got Chris Walsell, the yellow dragster in the Budweiser lane, the low buck special. Big block Chevrolet power in there, 468 cubic inches of power. And he's up against the blue blazer, Steve Warner, the man from Beaujeu. Now, Steve Warner is our number one qualifier. He ran a 9.26 during qualifying, and he dials in a 9.20. Chris Walsell, God bless his heart and cotton socks, he qualified with a 12.41. The car isn't on song at the moment, but he dials in a 9.30, trying to make a race of it. And absolutely no traction at the start line at all, but gets away. Now that looks as though it's running pretty well now for Chris Walsell, but it's a firm win in that right-hand lane for Steve Warner. Local man takes the win, and he'll be on the winner's rostrum collecting the trophy. 9.44 at 118 miles an hour. Stu Chamberlain on the Predator machine from Swindon in Wiltshire, and Stu riding an 1100cc Suzuki. Now, he qualified, he was our number two qualifier with 11.12, and Dave Hall qualified number one spot with a 10.98 right on the index. It's the first one to the top end who doesn't go quicker than 10.90, and Stu Chamberlain is the man who could possibly pull a good light here on the start line, and there's a little bit of psychology going on. They always say the last one in is the one to win. It's Dave Hall who goes in first. Well, does that tell us all? Here we go, there's the green. And Dave Hall away slightly in front. The reaction time of 0.62 is 0.64 for Stu Chamberlain. And they look as though side by side as they go towards the top end. Who's going to take the win? It is Dave Hall who takes the win. 11 seconds dead. And he won that on the start line, ladies and gentlemen, because he got such a close run thing there with Stu Chamberlain, just 100th between them on the finish line, and Dave took 200ths away from Stu Chamberlain on the start line. That's where he won that. So that's the final of 1090 bike. Dave Hall takes the win, and the first points in a long procession of points he hopes to get in the championship, both national and divisional this year. Okay, 990 bike then. In the Budweiser lane, the left-hand lane, the white leathered and white machine of Carl Larkham, the man who suddenly found form in that last outing. He'd been running pretty sick all day today, and suddenly got right down into the sort of performance that we expect from Carl Larkham, into the 9.9s. Same sort of rules apply here. First one to the top end who doesn't go quicker than 9.90, and he's up against Mark Sweetman, the man from Warrington. And let's have a look and see what happens here. Well, certainly Carl Larkham was away first. Mark Sweetman charging hard. Now, who's going to get to the top end first? 990 is restricted. It is Carl Larkham. Well, he really pulled that out. Runs a 10.28, shuts down Mark Sweetman with a 10.34. But it is a 10.28 win for the Suzuki mounted, the Katana mounted Carl Larkham. Okay, here we go. The final of Street Euro. Now, is it the tortoise and the hare? We'll have to wait and see. We had Trevor Langfield up here just now, and he was saying that after this meeting, he does not want to be known as the tortoise with his SD1 Rover. He's really going to try and get his nitrous oxide system working on there and get that car right down into the 12-second bracket. That's the SD1. That's Trevor Langfield out there in the right-hand lane, the man who comes from Doncaster. And the blacksmith from Bury in Lancashire, that's Gary Kay in the Cyclone Capri in the left-hand lane. Now, he dials in a time of... Just having a look to see what's happened. It's there's the green. We've got no times come up on the finishing gantry, so but a dialed in time of 16:01 for Gary Kay and 20.37 for the tortoise, the SD1 in the right-hand lane. Can Gary Kay catch him up and pass it? They go towards the top end. No, indeed, it is the tortoise who beats the hare. And that is Trevor Langfield who takes the win. He dialed in a 20.37 and runs 20.48. So well done, Trevor. Well, this is our final. And we've only had 2 Super ET cars here today, and they've been out there, what should we say, jousting with one another throughout the day. And we've got the Austin A30 and the Ford Pop. It's Martin Wicker in the Austin A30. And on the last run out, Ray Guy with the black Ford Pop ran 11.99, taking the win against Martin Wicker's 13.08. Now, I think they're going to be doing that again. I think it's heads-up racing from the line with these two. So, who's it going to be? Put your money on which car you fancy, an Austin A30 or a Ford Pop. Now is your chance. Sussex against Essex. Martin Wicker away first, but pulls a red light. So he over-anticipated there, pulls a red light on the tree. So the win automatically goes to Ray Guy in the Ford Pop in the right-hand lane. And let's see, Ray Guy runs 12.43. Well done to Ray. And lose out with that red light, 13.22. I'm going to get on with this straight away. 1090 bike. The runner-up in 1090 bike. Please welcome Stuart Chamberlain. Yes! Well done, Stu. Well done. But the winner, ladies and gentlemen, in 1090 bike, last year's champ, Essex man, Dave Hall. Well done, Dave. Good stuff. The 990 bike, and the winner, the runner-up in 990 bike. Give him a big round of applause, Mark Sweetman. The winner, ladies and gentlemen, in 990 bike, Carl Larker! Well done, Carl. Well done, mate. Congratulations. Good stuff. Okay, modified ET, great class, great racing, as always. A dynamic duo from Fords in the final. And the runner-up, ladies and gentlemen, with a paint scheme everybody is jealous of, Andy Brisbane. Well done, Andy. Super stuff. Well done, Andy. Great. Well done. But the winner, ladies and gentlemen, in a car I had when I was a child in 1920, and it is, of course, Chris Isaacs with the Ford Prefect. Well done, Chrissy. Well done, Chris. Great stuff. Okay, and finally, Pro ET. These guys going out there really putting down some great times and some good racing. Runner-up, ladies and gentlemen, and good to have him back with us, Chris Walsall. Well done, Chris. Good, nice to have you back, Chris. Well done, thanks very much indeed. And the winner, ladies and gentlemen, not a particularly attractive person, but he's okay, he's quite nice. Would you give him a nice big round of applause? Steve Walder! Well done, thanks, Steve. Well, there you are. Haven't you been wonderful?